Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben. Once again, I'm honored to welcome for the third time Michelle Nooney. Michelle and I have discussed Star Wars art before, and today we have something special in store for you guys. We're going through a couple of famous, legendary Star Wars artists, which many of those names you're going to recognize, and we're going to take a look at it from the perspective of a Star Wars fan and a Star Wars artist. Michelle, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us, how have you started into your journey painting Star Wars artwork, and what do you currently do?
Hi, my name is Michelle Nooney, and I have recently, within the last 3 years, started my Star Wars art journey. I started doing pet portraits, and then as I was inundated with pet art, I was like, it's starting to feel like a job. So I decided to start doing one piece a month for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And since I'm a huge Star Wars fan, I decided to start drawing Star Wars art. And then it started getting noticed. I would put it out there for everybody to watch or look at. And then I started being asked to do commissions, and kind of just blossomed from there.
Mm-hmm. And from our interactions on Twitter, I've noticed also you've reposted some of the more popular tweets that were kind of responding to your artwork. One of them, Mark Hamill himself, has responded, right?
Yes, so that was pretty cool. So he actually liked one of my drawings. It was the Millennium Falcon with Han and Chewie. It's an iconic version. They never used that in the movie, but they used it in a Rolling Stone ad. So I actually had a client commission me to do that. So yeah, and it happened to be one of my largest Star Wars art projects to date. It's a 24 by 36 pastel drawing. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And guys, obviously I'm going to drop all the relevant links where you could go ahead and check out Michelle's work. If you're interested in making some commissioned art, Michelle is the artist to go with. And guys, today I'm particularly excited because, I do have formal art education. In our earlier podcast with you, right, when you were introducing yourself, I kind of chimed in and mentioned that I also have BA in traditional animation, and I've spent over 7 years of figure drawing. I tried different medias and stuff, but I don't call myself an artist by any measure. I'm a graphic designer. I believe that being an artist is like a state of mind. It's a state of being, right? Because whether you're a commercial artist or you produce art just for yourself, for your enjoyment, for your meditation, it's almost like a compulsion, right? It's almost a feeling that you constantly want to project your inner thoughts, your feelings. You want to communicate with the audience, right?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely a feeling. It's something that you also want to make other people feel. So if we did not have art, the world would be absolutely boring. We couldn't get our feelings out. We couldn't create feelings. So absolutely, it's absolutely important. And
it creates that very interesting dialogue. I strongly believe that art isn't just there for sole adoration or, idolizing its creator, but also for critique and thought-provoking stuff and stuff that doesn't immediately just tickle those, enjoyment feelings in your brain, but also kind of provokes you and say, hold on a second, what am I looking at? Right? What is this stuff? And today we want to take a look at Star Wars artists from that particular perspective. So basically, guys, what I'm going to do is just share my screen, throw some artwork out there, and both of us get to kind of talk about this. You from your perspective as an artist who constantly produces art, and me just a Star Wars fan who is familiar, with Star Wars stories and storytelling through media like movies and comic books and novels, right? And I think it'll be an interesting experiment. So, Michelle, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Punch it.
Punch it, right? Engage. I know Star Wars fans are going to love me for that. All right, let me share my screen here. Guys, you know what? No matter what, I'm going to be both Star Wars and Star Trek fan no matter what. I enjoy both. How about you, Michelle?
I do too. I actually grew up with Star Trek first, so I was a Trekkie first.
Nice.
And then into Star Wars.
See, guys, you can't knock us. Right. You did ask me about this little art here, right on my desk. So I was like, hey, Ben, what is this? Not Star Wars related, but this is indeed from the Dungeons and Dragons, right? We see these multicolored ancient dragons here, really dope artwork. But you and I are here to talk about Star Wars. Hold on a second. Can I blow us up just a little bit? See our lovely faces. We're two beautiful young people. Okay, never mind. All right. So the first artist I do want to talk about, I think I would be remiss if we didn't, is you, Michelle.
Oh, okay.
All right, we're going to talk about some artwork here, and I did ask you before we started rolling this video to send me some of your contemporary stuff, some of the latest stuff that you've done. I don't think there is a more appropriate opener than Ahsoka Tano for the obvious reason, right? In August, we're getting a new show coming out. Lots of fans are being excited about it. Are you thrilled? Now, we know this is a show that's going to be run by Dave Filoni. How excited are you? What's your level of excitement?
Oh my gosh, I am just over the moon. I cannot absolutely wait for this and how they're going to unfold everything. So yeah, this is going to be good.
See, with me, I'm a huge Star Wars animation fan. I think in terms of storytelling qualities, they have fared generally far better in the animation department rather than live action. Although I do enjoy Andor quite a bit, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I'm a little bit worried how Dave Filoni is going to handle live action. But regardless, Ahsoka Tano has been one of my favorite characters the moment that she was introduced in the Clone Wars show. I remember I was back in my college days at School of Visual Arts. We were discussing, because we had the insider information, like before it was publicly announced, that George Lucas is indeed working on this super ambitious animated show. And since those days, Ahsoka sort of had a rocky start. Some adult fans were like saying, she's a little bit more for the kids and stuff. But she has matured into this fully developed, fleshed out character. And what you have here, I was really, literally, like when I saw this artwork, I do believe I saw it because you and I would constantly interact on social media, Twitter, Facebook. Before you even sent me the high resolution quality of it, I saw this work before, and I really, really enjoyed it. Do you mind if I just go first and just give you my first thoughts, and then we kind of go a little bit deeper? And I want to ask you about what was the premise of you kind of like representing this piece.
Sure.
Go ahead. What I really enjoy about this particular one, aside from the fact that it's like very, I would say, standard but heroic pose. It's something that a lot of people enjoy seeing their heroes. Like she has her 2 signature lightsabers. She's standing there. But what I really enjoy about this piece is your treatment of color. The way that you treat the medium. What is this done with? Could you tell us, please?
Sure. So the majority of it is pastels, but what I do to create the lightsaber effect is I lay down a thin layer, probably like ink-like consistency of acrylic gouache. I think that's how you say it. It's gouache paint. And then, because it dries matte, and then it actually soaks into the tooth of the paper. And so then when I layer my pastel on top of it, it doesn't smudge. And so then, because as you know, with pastels, they don't dry. It's a dry medium. It's like chalk. So I have to lay that down as a way to be able to blend in the pastels on top without it smudging. So that's how I'm able to create that light effect.
And this is what I just enjoy looking at it, the way that you light up the character as well. We go from the dark areas here. If you guys, I hope you can see my cursor here as I'm pointing it out as we're conversating, these darker shadows and the folds in her clothing. Obviously, it adds mystique, not only because, she's robed and this hood is falling down her face, but also just in color treatment. It creates this allure and mystique. Like, ooh, obviously we know who the character is, but it still gives you that sense of mystery. Like, oh, wow, this is Ahsoka Tano, the fulcrum years or something like this. Very, very interesting. And a second thing that I wanted to point out in this piece is that the likeness, right? We know what the live action version of Ahsoka Tano looks like, obviously portrayed by the actress Rosario Dawson. And you accomplished something that I find a lot of artists, even famous Star Wars artists, struggle a little bit with. Likeness is not an easy thing to accomplish. Like, how do you go preparing yourself for, like, I'm going to convey this particular actress's face in my painting?
Oh, man. And, actually with this, it's really difficult because the finished size is 11 by 17. So you have to know that her face is probably the size of a $50. And to be able to pay attention to the subtleties of the tonal changes, where the shadow, the gradations there, it is absolutely difficult because pastel pencils, they blunt really easy. But after drawing so much pet portraits and so much art over the past few years, I've really just trained my eye to see where the shadows and everything fall, where the color starts changing. But it was difficult, absolutely. But I found it was kind of easy in some aspects because she's orange. And so I didn't really have to think about the colors of human skin per se. So I think that helps.
She's an alien, right? But she's still, yeah.
Right.
She has to be this recognizable, obviously, human face. And yeah, the general rule of thumb is, the darker your colors are, it tends to push it gives you the illusion of pushing things behind. And if it's lighter, it's illuminated, it pushes things forward. So you create that illusion of depth, even though we're looking at two-dimensional artwork, right?
Right. And so what I've always been taught is that in order to create depth, you have to have full tonal range. So you have to have something that's absolutely brilliantly white, and that you have to have something that's completely black.
Right.
And so that also, if I'm, so in all my art pieces, I try to contain something that's absolutely white and absolutely black. And then when I'm actually down, if I'm coloring it, it's able to discern the different, proper
it creates
shape.
This very, very dramatic look. Very quickly, we're going to run to your second drawing here, guys. We're going to cover quite a lot here, right? We're going to try not to fixate too much, but Michelle, you're my guest. I don't want to get my head on a chopping block after we stop, this podcast. I want to pay it, due time. But definitely, I'm paying attention to it now. Before I saw it, but it was sort of behind in the back of my mind. Now I see it, this very, very dramatic play of color and tone and shadow between the extreme whites, right, and extreme blacks really creates a sense of drama. Let's go to a second painting by Michelle Nooney. Oh, look at this. All right. This is where these characters need no introduction, right?
Right.
What really struck me here, Michelle, you capture this very emotional father and son relationship here. What I particularly love, and I was stunned, I think I actually commented on your post on Facebook when you made this. Dude, I'm marveling at these reflections. Something about reflections adds a really interesting quality to the storytelling of your picture. When we look at little Grogu here, I don't know, something about this fuzzy hair being like illuminated behind it. The way that you just lit it up, it just makes him so innocent and lovable, cute, like you just want to hold him in your hand. And then with Mando, I can't explain, I can't vocalize exactly what their reflections do for me, other than just badassery. How cool is this? What were you trying to accomplish with this particular piece?
For one, this piece was pretty cool because Grogu is ornery. And that's one of the one things that I love about him. And so you can see that he's trying to touch it and then trying to see if he's, can get away with it with Mando.
He was playing with that handle, right?
Yes. Yes. So that's the part that really got to me. But I absolutely love light and I love texture. And so just to be able to create that sense of that light on his, it looks incorrect when I'm drawing it, but then after it's all done, it's yes, exactly. That's what you're trying to convey. So there were so many different textures, from his hair to his fuzzy cape to the leather on his strap and the lights. So it was really a fun piece to create.
And obviously you're creating a scene from the show, right? We can go to the actual episode and kind of hit pause and find a similar shot of this.
Yes.
But what really makes my eye travel around the picture and almost makes it easier on the eye and you enjoy it more is the simplification of form. Right, because when you look at the folds on little Grogu here, obviously you're not going for it. You have all the skill and technical know-how to put as much detail in your painting as you want, but obviously you're not doing it. And I feel like sometimes when you want to kind of unplug from overabundance of imagery and media, different source of data that we absorb, visual and sensory and audio, And we're just looking at it here, you're simplifying these forms. It almost looks like an art piece. I don't know, from like a medieval age or something like that. Those set of paintings which are deliberately flat, deliberately dealing with simplified forms. It's something to behold. It's so light on the eye. It's like I'm pretty sure when one of your clients puts it somewhere on the wall behind the glass, you know, or it's just people go to it immediately and enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. When after it's framed, you would not believe the difference this looks after you have a mat and a frame around it. It really just actually sets the piece off. It completes it.
And well, let's finish the round with our first artist, Michelle Nooney. You have one more piece here.
Yep.
With Mr. Boba.
Right.
And his famous ship. What was that ship called? I keep forgetting. It's
Slave One.
Oh, it's Slave One. It is Slave One. It's Slave One, guys. Okay, Disney, you're listening to us. It's Slave One. That's the name of the ship.
Not Fire Spray.
Not Fire. Although, can I mention something? It's gonna sound like blasphemy, Michelle, but I kind of feel, and I pointed it out the moment it was announced, because we sort of, as adults, well knew what they were doing. They just didn't want to put Slave One labeling on the little toy boxes they were trying to push. Whatever. Fire Spray kind of sounds badass to me. I don't know, man.
Really?
Yeah, it kind of sounds dope. Like Fire Spray. Like, oh my God. I like imagine the ship flying and just like barraging laser blasts all over some kind of like compound or something. It just sounds badass to me. It has a punch to it.
Sure, I can see that. I'm
not defending this now. I'm just saying.
No,
I'm just saying.
No, I understand. But I will always be a Slave One fan.
Slave One.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Yeah.
Oh. I was just going to say this was fun to create. So the client asked me to create a piece that was totally and completely not in the books or not from, So I ended up finding a backdrop of Slave One and then photoshopping in Boba Fett and creating this for the client. So that was pretty cool.
Yes, I've heard this technique before. It's obviously I rock and roll with Photoshop because that takes up most of my design work. That's what I do. I'm a professional retoucher, usually like on product lines. But sometimes what you would do is you would create a photographic composite. You would take one background, superimpose your favorite hero on it, and now you have a visual photographic reference for it, and that's what you paint from. And a lot of people who may not be as involved with art would say, well, that's a little bit like cheating. Like, well, believe it or not, even the classically trained ancient, mega popular historical artists, what they would do is use references. Before they would go and sculpt a famous, like a classical Greek sculpture, they would actually have real life models standing in front of them that they would draw from different angles, and only then they would go and try to sculpt it. Everybody uses reference here. But what I wanted to ask you here, Michelle, is in this drawing, I think what was important to capture, obviously you have Slave One in the background, but a mechanical character. Let's call Slave One a character. It's as much a part of Boba Fett as who he is, right, and his armor. So that's kind of, for me, is a little bit easier to replicate. It's sitting there in the background, and we recognize that a form. But with Boba Fett, I think what you really needed to sell in order to have this painting work is his attitude. And you capture it in this very simplistic just stance. He's like, he's just standing there, and he has his blaster in front of him, and it just carries over, and you feel it like, yeah, this is Boba Fett. This is the gunsling that we're used to, because the poster, like, how aware were you what you wanted to do with the Boba himself in order to, translate it well in your art?
I just searched for images that were like kind of his iconic stance, you're right, just kind of showed his attitude, his, because you can't see his face.
Right.
So you have to go more through body language. And so that's kind of what I was trying to look for when I was searching for images.
Overall, just an enjoyable painting. I really love looking at. Once again, it's the amount of detail and amount of combination of color and contrast. It's just, your pieces are easy on the eye. I think they're perfectly suited for somebody to just print it, whatever size they wish. And they just present it in their room, and like people walk in and, take a look at it and have fun. I think our next artist that we should discuss is the person without whom I don't think Star Wars would be possible. Ralph McQuarrie, right?
Yeah,
The person
absolutely.
responsible. I think he's as much responsible for creating Star Wars as George Lucas. He brought that vision to life, but he visualized the images that George would point a finger to say that, yes, that's exactly what I want. Yes, this was in my mind, but he actually gave it shape and form. And I wanted to go to this painting because it's probably one of the most recognizable, famous pieces of art ever done on Star Wars, right? We see an early version concept of Luke Skywalker with his like gas mask or whatever this is in this container behind him, or jetpack, if you will, fighting with a very thin bladed laser sword versus his arch nemesis, right? The Darth Vader.
And I like the old, the way that he actually, if they would have left that helmet, it probably would have seemed more sinister. And so it seemed like they kind of toned it down when they updated that helmet. But I've always been a fan of that old mask myself.
Right. So Ralph McQuarrie, as many of you guys may know, not only he did matte paintings, right? Those actual pieces of work that went in the film and served as a background, but he also conceptualized a lot of ideas like spaceships and characters. What would you say separates Ralph McQuarrie from other artists, let's say, who worked on the original trilogy?
Gosh, just his vision of, where this was supposed to go. And just the way his mind worked about how things were supposed to look, and, the workings of, space, and, I don't know, and his use of color, that type of thing too.
Yeah.
So I think that's what sets it apart for me.
For me, what I always marveled at, I was being introduced to Star Wars art when I actually immigrated to US, and now I had more than just 3 movies on VHS tapes to go to. Now I realized, oh, hold on a second, there's movies, there's comic books, there's so much media out there. And when we started watching the documentaries behind the making of Star Wars prequel trilogy, when the prequels were coming out, like Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, there was a lot of documentaries, even before the movies hit theaters, where George Lucas is discussing it on different, featurettes and the making of and the blue screen and the special effects, and where the Ralph McQuarrie name popped off. And when I started looking at his art, what immediately set him apart from the rest is I became a huge fan of 70s and 80s sci-fi and fantasy book cover art. And he definitely comes from that school of thought. But what separated him from the rest is that he's such an amazing, tremendous storyteller. And the reason I chose this art, you look at it, it is not a simple action scene that's going on here. It kind of like continues on, and you want to start raising questions like, hold on a second, who is this character? Where exactly are they standing? Is this a prototype version of a Death Star? Is it a Tantive 4 maybe? Early in the film, when the first stormtroopers take over Tantive 4 and they go aboard this rebel ship, and this is where this character meets them first, because this is all conceptual ideas. The story is not fully formed, and yet it just, all these questions start sparking in your mind. You go 10 different directions. You're trying to expand this piece behind its 4 frames and figure out what the hell is the story here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It just makes you want to know more about what's going on. It makes actually more questions. So you're like, I need to read the book. I need to see something.
Yeah. How are you feeling about the use of the old school version of samurai-like helmet Vader mask versus what we got in the film?
I really like it. I really like it. It conveys just absolutely more menacing, more threatening, more mysterious type of vibe to me. I do like it.
I do enjoy it as well, but it's almost, like you mentioned, it's a bit more exotic because the shapes are a little slicker. They're a bit rounder, where I enjoyed, but it still felt to me a little bit like a work in progress. It's ideating and figuring out what the final thing is going to look like. But I think they completely hit the nail in the head in the final film, because Vader's helmet is more squarish. It's much more brutish. It's almost like obviously reminiscent of that Nazi soldier's helmet, right? It's just so square and raw, like in your face, especially when you look at it symmetrically from the front up. It's devastating. It just like projects menace into your face. Like, oh my God.
Right.
This feels like a cool space samurai.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Right? I can see that.
Yeah. Let's move on with Ralph McQuarrie. And we're going to take a look at this one. And this, as some of our fans may know, was one of the first early concept posters for the film. We see a very raw version of Han Solo alien, who would later become Chewie, right? He was like this green alien. They were kind of like figuring out. Obviously, the droids were the ones, R2-D2 and C-3PO, who were figured out from the get-go. You got a Death Star in the background. This is, I believe, Luke Skywalker turned into Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm pretty sure fans will correct us. I forget the story. But at one point, Luke Skywalker was this older general. And the Luke character, the real main archetype, was a lady. He was a young female girl. And the question I wanted to ask you here, Michelle, is A, what kind of feeling do you get from if you saw this poster somewhere like on a movie theater wall? What kind of like ideas would it give you? And what do you think would have happened? How would Star Wars franchise would have went if we got in the 70s a female hero?
I don't know if I would have really been. I'm so used to the way, how men were always the hero. So I don't know if I could have gotten into that right away. I appreciate it more now, but I think I don't know if we were absolutely ready for that yet. So
gotcha.
Does that seem, I don't know if that seems anti-feminist or
no, I think it's totally fair. I think you're kind of like going into this, traditional way of thinking where like, look, we have a young hero. Look, I'm going to proclaim it right away, guys. I'm all for the, equality of sexes, but at the same time, we recognize that men and women, we're not the same. Whether it's a social construct, whether it's biology or not, I think both, without women, this world would be a sad place. Without men, equally so. We all add something to each other. We complement one another. Women have certain qualities of strength that men don't have, and vice versa. And we complement one another. We can't be without one another. And I think the world would have been ready if George Lucas was bold in doing it. And I don't think he hesitated, like, I don't know, maybe the world is not ready. Maybe it's just how the story naturally evolved. I do enjoy your typical young hero, coming of age guy, saving his princess, damsel in distress, as long as she's not completely like just helpless. Like, oh my God, just help me. I'm just here to be this body that you saved. Because Leia, men do come to her rescue. Right. And then she completely turns the ball on them. It's like, hey, guys, let's kick some ass here. Like, oh, my God. But they still came to her rescue. And when you strike that perfect balance where we all need each other, you need friends, you need family, you need your male hero behind your shoulder. You need that sense of comfort. And you need that woman, that mother figure sometimes in Greek mythology that gives you hopefulness and strength and teaches you the lessons to go and step into a larger world. Once again, it all circles back. It's not a domination game. It's not who's going to win and get more scores at the end. It's I don't know. I'm totally with you here. But when I look at this piece, I marvel at it. It's like, holy crap. Because I'm a huge fan of Rey from sequel trilogy. I do enjoy her a lot. She just has that sense of innocence, and Luke's journey reflected back with her, there's a feminine side. I look at it, it's like, it's kind of cool. But tell me, Michelle, I don't think you fully answered, was if you saw this as a poster in a movie theater, how excited would you be to go to the booth and pick up a ticket?
I would be really excited because I'm like, what's happening here? I've never seen this type of creatures before. What's going on with this? These two robots. We got like looks like a cyborg type of thing. And we've never. Well, we kind of saw it with Star Trek with the spaceships out there, but it still would get me intrigued as to what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah. What captures my mind instantly, me as a moviegoer, would be like sold right away. Like, hey, where do I pre-purchase the tickets? When is this thing coming out? I'll be checking out the theater every day. It's just a color palette. It is so foreign. I mean, yellow skyline, two suns. Like, what the heck is this? This is so otherworldly. That's what also Ralph McQuarrie had, a sense of otherworldliness. It's like you're waking up into a dream. and you're completely transported, and it's so difficult to do in the span of just one frame. If a movie has thousands of frames to convey a 3-hour story, this is, you got one chance, one picture to capture my mind, and this does that.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
His imagination was just incredible to me, just incredible. And how he was able to capture that, for one, from his brain to paper is something.
Yeah. And I want to close up with this Ralph McQuarrie painting, which I really, really enjoy a lot. I think you might, you'll appreciate this. The Millennium Falcon, right? But not only we have the Millennium Falcon here, obviously, we have a whole ensemble, a cast of characters, which look a lot more finalized, right? In the lower left corner, we have R2 and C-3PO, we have Chewie, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker, and on the right, there is a Han Solo little character, his blue shirt, ready to meet them. Let's talk about this once again. What's going on here? What's the fullness of this image? What was Ralph McQuarrie going for?
The immensity of the size of the spacecraft. That's what I see is like, this is just, it puts everything into perspective, I think, when I look at this.
That's an excellent point. Yeah. You once again, you were able to articulate this. You don't quite know whether, you know, Millennium Falcon is going to end up being a saucer-like shape, right? Because we're seeing it from the side. But you're right, like with all of these horizontal lines and little human figures standing next to Millennium Falcon creates this awesome sense of scale. But at the same time, the Millennium Falcon does not look bulky. And I think that's part of the allure of the ship. It is so slick looking. It's huge in size, right? It's big in size, but it's so slick and cool looking that when you think of your like earlier ages, when you were a young person, like you were just responding to everything that's cool looking. You don't need to like deeper and go behind the surface and go about intricate thoughts and feelings. You just go for the novelty of it, for what's in front of you. And when you look at the Millennium Falcon here, it's like, oh my God, I want to ride this ship. Right? I want to be in this ship, right?
Yes. And I was just amazed on how you can create such straight lines with, as a pastel artist, it is so difficult to maintain straight lines for me. I mean, you try to draw straight lines with a crayon, you can't do it. They're clean and crisp. So when I look at this, I just look at the technical side of it as well. Like,
the geometry is really awesome. It's like almost a scientific like approach. I mean, we know from the history of Ralph McQuarrie that he did some design work for the military. He was like painting these first planes, right, and fighters, and then later on he started going like into space and like designing what future spaceships would look like and rockets. And obviously that more technical approach comes into it. So it's not just a fantasy of it or just your imagination, but it's also his technical skill is unrivaled, I think.
Right. And so when I look at this, I mean, you really believe that, wow, this could work, or this, you know.
Yeah. Just look at this. Like if we just crop this to here, just like, oh my God, you're in it. You want to go on an adventure with these characters.
Right. You wonder, where is R2 going?
Yeah. He's like,
I'm out of here.
See, unless I think, Michelle, once again, our friends might correct us. If I remember correctly, at one point, this was supposed to be his upfront position where he's like almost drooping, he's pointing downward, and that's supposed to be his face, and that's how he moves forward.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, interesting.
So they changed it, huh? Okay.
I think so, yes. I could be mistaken, but it's like something just to freshen my memory. Nice. Let's change things up a little bit, and I want to go to an artist who did Star Wars comic book covers, and he was also legendary for painting stuff like Kiss, you know, album covers and stuff like that. The legendary illustrator Ken Kelly. First of all, are you familiar with him?
No. Oh my gosh, what
legendary art! Legendary artist. He did fantastic. He also was, I think, at one point very much inspired by Frank Frazetta's, you know, Conan the Barbarian, you know, like artwork that he did in the 60s and 70s. So we'll look at this one. This is from the Star Wars Boba Fett Enemy of the Empire. And I wanted us to take a look at this piece. First of all, tell me what draws your attention first.
Well, the use of color, for one, and the the fighting, you can see so much emotion through their fighting style
Right.
right there. The
From
flowy,
Boba
I
Fett's
mean,
gesture, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. It looks like they're on Mustafar, if I were to assume correctly. Is
Right.
that?
That's what I'm thinking too.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't remember this guy. I've read it years ago, but I don't remember. But what I really enjoy, obviously, the reason I wanted us to switch over to comic book art is that because the objectives are different here, right? If you're conceptualizing something, Ralph McQuarrie, here, you got to sell a comic book. A person got to go and pay his, $2.99 or $3.99 or $1.50, whatever these comic books were back in the day, and purchase this book. So there's this, as an illustrator, this sense of, I'm gonna make this comic book stand out with just one piece of art, and it's so compact. You get the background, you get the sense of place where this is gonna take place, and it's so dramatic and exciting and dangerous looking, right? Then you got your cast. You got obviously Darth Vader kicking ass with his red lightsaber, and once again he's so ferocious and like very dominating pose. He's like, I'm about to chop you in half. So once again, it's that extremity of the situation. And as you mentioned before, Boba Fett, he's not fretting here. He's once again, with this very cool, almost like a martial artist or a boxer kind of like thing, throwing his punch there. And automatically, I personally want to pick up this book and say, hey, what the heck is going on? What is this story? Hold on a second. Boba Fett actually went versus Darth Vader. He's supposed to be his henchman, right?
Right. Absolutely. Like what the heck happened between them? They had a falling out.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that actually Darth can raise his hand, because I know in the OG that he was limited by, so I'm like, oh, they must have.
The practicality of the suit, you mean, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, actually. Yeah. So here we see that he's able to kind of like countermand that as like, screw the suit, I'm going to kill. I thought instantly you're going to respond to Ken Kelly's color palette and his use of color. So that's why I wanted to bring him up. I had a feeling, I don't know, for some reason that he might be a discovery for you. So I'm happy that happened.
Yeah.
So we have another piece by him of Ki-Adi-Mundi, right? One of the Jedi Council members that we briefly see in the prequel trilogy, right? He's sitting there in the council. He has a few lines to say. And obviously during the Order 66 scene, remember, very dramatic scene when he's attacking with his clone troopers, they actually like just blast him in the back and kill him off. But here we have this scene here. Tell me what you think of this.
Oh my gosh, that is fantastic. For one, comic book art has always, there are some comic book artists that kind of get it where you get the idea of who they should look like, but then you got, wow, this actually looks like the character. I mean, it's very close to realistic. Yeah. And I love that. The whole color palette too, the way that they were able to create the saber, and you're like wondering, what exactly are these aliens?
And it's so claustrophobic because they're coming in from every side of the frame. They're closing in on him, and everything around him is dark. And the only thing that's illuminated by light is obviously Ki-Adi-Mundi and a little bit of background behind him. So automatically you feel like he is surrounded. He's obviously surrounded. We clearly see that. But also it gives you that sense of claustrophobia, of space closing in on him because the way that it's framed.
Yes, and the color too, the color palette, you've got your yellow, and complementary is the purple, so that's really good too.
Yeah, I actually have just noticed one foot is actually behind this little entrance piece, so perhaps he's like backtracking. He's trying to step away from danger.
Yeah,
it's really very awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And let's take a look at one last piece by Ken Kelly, which it's probably one of my favorite pieces of art in Star Wars illustration.
Oh, got the Tuskens.
That Tusken Raiders.
Wow, that is really cool. And it looks like the Jawas had blue hands.
Yeah.
That's different.
And red capes, which I think it's color accurate. Sometimes when you pull stuff from Google, you search, sometimes the color palette is not accurate. But I looked at this piece 1,000 different times. I have the actual digital. I have all Star Wars comic books. I purchased them digitally, so I know what it's supposed to look like. That's a very accurate representation of it.
Wow. I wonder if we'll ever get to see what a Jawa looks like.
I hope not. Like, really? You want to see one?
I'm curious because was it The Mandalorian?
Hmm.
When I was trying to think of what her name is that babysits Grogu,
Ah, yes, that's right. That's right.
and she
Yeah.
says that they're fuzzy.
Yeah.
So it
So
makes
I did a short video,
perfect.
like I have these lore videos that I do on like aliens and spaceships and heroes. So according to Republic scientists who went to Tatooine and had researched the country's geology and native species, that supposedly Jawas are almost like mouse-like creatures. They are supposed to be furry, either feline or mouse-like. These the kind of like really like small snouts and really awkward-looking creatures.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's still interesting because we've never seen one what they're supposed to look like. So
yeah,
I'm anxious to see if they will
yeah.
uncover those.
The reason I wanted to show this piece is because it almost feels like there's so much story here that it encapsulates almost like a full episode of The Mandalorian, of the Book of Boba Fett,
Right?
where this is the piece you would see behind, because you have Tuskens in the background riding one of their mounts, and you have them stomping on the little poor Jawas, and the human female running
Right.
around with a little Luke-looking blonde little baby. Like, what the heck is going on?
Right? Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
This is very cool. I
yeah,
love that.
and they're
And
like,
it's
go ahead.
what year was this made?
It's signed 1999.
And it's funny because that's exactly the exact representation of the gaffy stick, that Boba has. So it's
Yeah,
really cool.
in the show, I'm pretty sure, John Favreau and Dave Filoni, they're hugely inspired by the Legends material, and they pulled from, it's a Gaffy sticks. Yeah, it's an excellent point. It looks exactly the same. And it's very, very interesting to me how the different Tuskens, they're kind of like spreading out in different directions. One is like almost wants to jump to the right of the frame, another one to the left. And they're almost like, we see only a few Jawas and a human figure in the frame, but it looks like they're attacking a whole village. Because obviously there's a little piece of a sandcrawler here that we see here.
Oh,
Maybe it's a whole Jawa village thereafter.
oh, wow. Wow. That's very cool. And you can almost hear them do that little donkey noise or whatever.
Yeah. So once again, when you and I would take a look at stuff like this, how important it is to be cognitive of what you put in your background. How do you set up your composition? And this is a piece. It may look just like a piece of sandcrawler for the cool factor, but it's also, and it resolves the composition somehow, make it more interesting, makes it pop. But at the same time, it's a piece of storytelling. Like, hold on a second, they managed to stop an entire sandcrawler. Like, what the heck?
Right. Yeah, it does. It makes me wonder what else is going on and exactly where are they. Well, it looks like they have to be on Tatooine, I would think, because that's where they live.
Jawas, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. The next one I want to bring up also, he is probably, after Ralph McQuarrie he kind of took that mantle, and he did for Star Wars book sales and posters as much as Ralph McQuarrie did for the movies. Drew Struzan.
Oh, yeah.
So Drew Struzan has illustrated tons of comic book art, but he also was responsible for, in my opinion, some of the most brilliant, striking book cover illustrations. These are some of my favorite Star Wars Legends books, and that's why I chose to pick them. I'm not sure how familiar you are. Like, have you read any Star Wars books?
I am reading right now Heir of the Empire by Timothy Zahn right now. So like I'm on chapter 28, I believe, right now. So Thrawn, oh my goodness. I can't wait to see what they do with him live action.
Did you like Thrawn in the Clone Wars show, the Rebels show?
I have not watched the Rebels. Have not.
Oh, okay.
So
that's a homework assignment.
Yes, absolutely. And so when I'm learning about this character Thrawn, this is just what I'm learning from him from Timothy Zahn. So it's just he's very fascinating, and he's very, very super intelligent. Like,
yeah. Wow. Cunning mind, and he uses studying culture's art in order to be able to like pierce their mindset at what they're like in order to defeat them, right?
Absolutely. And so I think that's kind of why I'm drawn to him as well, because of the fact how he's kind of like a curator,
of art. Yeah.
Right. in a twisted sense.
He's like your bougie New York City Midtown intellectual. It's like, I'm just going to defeat you with my mind. I'm going to concentrate and think very hard. I'm not going to like resort to pedestrian physical violence. I'm just going to outsmart you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think just the way that I'm learning about him through Timothy Zahn is very eye-opening. And I hope that they are, well, I heard that they were actually asking Timothy for his input on the show. So that's going to be cool.
Yeah, because he's been transplanted into Star Wars canon. He writes Thrawn books for the modern canon, so he's very much part of the Star Wars fandom. As you can see here, this particular book, since you just are being introduced to these wonderful characters he created, this is what his duology that he wrote after the Thrawn. Obviously, I'm not going to reveal any spoilers, but you could see Thrawn a little bit here in the background. And this character on the lower right, you might recognize.
I believe that's Mara.
That's Mara Jade. This is my favorite depiction of Mara Jade throughout the years. She just, whatever she's described in the books, that's how she looks like to me.
Yeah, I can see that. I see her as a fiery redhead, and as this. I'm not through the books, but I'm like, I understand that she was supposed to kill Luke at Jabba's palace,
Right.
But she is so freaking bitter. I'm like,
well, she's been mentally indoctrinated by the Emperor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't want to speak too much there, otherwise I might spoil things. I'm not. I don't know how much you story you've read, but the reason I wanted to bring Drews to Zahn is he does one thing that very few Star Wars artists manage to do, and it's character and actor likenesses. Obviously, you could see here these three covers that kind of align with what we're talking about. We have Leia and Han on the right. We have Luke and this character in the background, which is an entirely new character, and then Callista, and then you have Han Solo and also Luke in the background. I'm pretty sure he also used some photographic reference because some of the actor faces, the way that they move the turn and the way that their faces are illuminated, you sort of recognize from different photographs and still shots from the movies. But still, talk about how challenging is that for an artist to recreate the likeness of a famous actor.
Oh my gosh. When I draw pet portraits, everybody knows their pet and everything. So there is some leeway that you can have because it's a pet, it's an animal. Everybody kind of gets the idea. But if you are millimeters off on a well-known person, everybody will see it. And so the ability to capture portraits and achieve that realism in art, that always blows me away. That's always fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes there's maybe just a tiny bit discrepancy here. Sometimes the jaw might look a little bit more squarish than it is on Mark Hamill. A little tiny detail. But once again, it's not meant to be photographic recreation of what the actor is supposed to be like, because it's imbued with a sense of feeling and qualities that the artist is trying to put in it. Because as soon as it's close enough in terms of accuracy, you're sold, okay, I'm looking at Mark Hamill, I'm looking at Harrison Ford, but you're also looking at somebody that's supposed to evoke emotion and give you that sense of adventure. And when they're standing next to a character that is entirely new, that character also needs to be able to hold up and not look just like your typical, magazine cover looking male of a female figure, but somebody who looks like a person, somebody that has character. Like when I look at Mara Jade here, the way that she's portrayed here, these full, small lips that she has like almost Asian look to her. Almost, not quite. But I really enjoy it because it's not typical sort of beauty, if that makes any sense. It's a kind of, it's the kind of person that you meet at a small party and you want to go and say hello to, and they don't immediately strike you. And somebody's like, that would be somebody I'm romantically might be interested in. That's just an interesting looking person.
Sure. And one of the things too that's hard, especially about drawing Harrison Ford, is that his face is different on one side than the other. I don't know if you are aware of that.
Asymmetry,
yeah. He has a lot of that, and it's very difficult to portray that.
Yeah, they were teaching me in my art classes that basically we have a sense of symmetry because obviously we have two eyes, and two ears, but no biological forms are 100% symmetrical. We're all different if you stop paying close attention. Right. Before we move on, very quick question, Michelle. Does he look like this is a character called Prince Isildur that will become prominent in the books later on. Does he strike you as this like Greek god Adonis, oh my god, I'm swooning all over you kind of character?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because that was exactly the objective here, to show that he's swaggering in. He becomes one of the, like, there was a love triangle going on between Han, Leia, and this character. It's such a very amusing and whimsical scenes between the three that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, his chest is all puffed out. He's looking up. Yeah. He's got his chin up. He's very proud, very, regal, full of himself, kind of, a little bit.
I'm almost like want to say Bruce Campbell's lines, like, give me some sugar, baby. He's like, yeah. Like, yeah. I'm here. Like, this just a dude. He's like just there puffing his chest. And just very quickly, we saw this art here, right, of the Children of the Jedi. I wanted to kind of like show you very briefly that he actually did full spreads, and the artwork goes all around the cover of the book. So in a sense, it would look like this. So most of his art pieces are like this.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Right?
I always appreciate the thought that goes into that, because then you can turn it around and it, oh, wow, this becomes one whole piece. Yeah, I love that.
Right. And then he kind of left space open here for the obvious title of the book and so forth. This was going to be the spine in the middle, so he leaves it here. Put a little Gamorrean in here because nobody wants to see his face. All right, let's keep it moving. Again, I want to introduce you to a gentleman that I had a total honor of interviewing, Greg Hildebrand. Him and his late twin brother Tim were two artists also responsible for some of the most legendary Star Wars art, including the first Star Wars A New Hope poster. But I did not pick it for this particular discussion. I wanted to bring something different. They were the brothers that often worked together side by side on a single canvas. The way he described it in the podcast, they would actually stand on either side of a canvas and just work it out and work it together and complement one another. I felt it was a completely fascinating story. And the first piece of art that I wanted to throw at you comes from, they were responsible for doing a set of illustrated postcards that went for their book called Shadows of the Empire, which was advertised as a Star Wars campaign. It was almost like a movie coming out, but it was a book, a comic book. They produced a video game, a radio drama, even a soundtrack. The book had a soundtrack, and they created the artwork. They basically conceptualized the whole thing. And this is one scene from the Shadows of the Empire that I wanted to bring.
And you can totally hear this photo too. I mean, you can hear the bikes.
Yeah. And what I wanted to ask you about here, what do you think the work involving the contrast between the extreme lights and darks and color give to this particular scene?
Well, there's definitely a sense of urgency going on.
Mm-hmm.
It is very dramatic.
And you mentioned like you almost hear these swoop bikes, like it was like almost like a motorcycle. Obviously, they have different sounds in the movies, but still, what I really enjoyed about their work. So they did have some art education, but they were primarily, as Greg mentioned, to be self-taught.
Wow.
And
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I totally appreciate it as well. And throughout their career, they were picking up on different things and learning. And what I really love and adore about Greg Hildebrand is that he doesn't believe in these, when art academia starts separating and put illustrators on a lower tier, and then there's fine art and this and that. Because when I look at their work here, it is absolutely brilliant. Yes, this is not, Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo or Raphael. They're not trying to convey these greater, larger-than-life theological themes, but they're still conveying emotion here, and they're conveying what the scene is supposed to give you. And that drama between the colors adds, once again, a sense of adventure. And this is the theme that obviously reiterates throughout all of the pieces we're looking at. Greg and Tim Hildebrand were awesome storytellers. They were able to visualize these amazing alien strange worlds which are unlike your own. And I can't even imagine looking at this artwork as an 11-year-old boy and saying like, oh my God, Mom, Dad, can we buy like a plane or a rocket ticket to this place? Like, I want to go there. Like, what the heck is this?
Right? I could see them making like a something at Disney from this.
Yeah, right. Like maybe like a ride, a 3D ride where
Right.
you jump on the ride and there's like 3D screens around. There's sort of like a Harry Potter one.
Right.
The next piece by Greg and Tim Hildebrand I wanted to show you is this one with Orlando Calrissian.
And if I were to guess, they're playing Sabak.
Yeah, most likely. What's the card game? Sabak. I can't think of any other one.
And that looks like Leia in the back.
Mm-hmm.
That almost looks like the actor Tamora Morrison.
Tamara Morrison.
Yeah, it looks like him at the
That's
table.
an interesting. That's an interesting thought. This is prequel era, so obviously we didn't have Tamara Morrison in the films, but still, that's an interesting idea. Maybe they were inspired by this artwork, and George said, "You know what? I kind of want an actor that sort of looks like this." Tamura has a very interesting features, very interesting like, physiognomy, and a very exotic look to him. But again, I wanted to show you this particular piece that I really enjoyed. Once again, you're thrown in the middle of a scene, but I wanted to ask you specifically about this one, is the way that Tim and Greg used highlights. And I'm going to point this out specifically. I don't know what the exact technical term to this is, but if we look at our alien, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
All right, if we look at the alien on the left-hand side, it was like almost a bat-like ears here, and you see this bluish tinted outline delineate some of the form. Some of it falls on his shoulder, but then we see it translate over to Leia's sides of the face, and it goes over to his right shoulder, and also C-3PO. Like, how would you find this outlining commonly used in a piece of art?
It just depends on where your light source is, right? So it looks like the light source is coming from over Chewie.
Okay.
That's what I would see.
See, I wasn't thinking of it in terms of them trying to logistically figure out the scene and light it properly. I was thinking of it completely differently. I was thinking in the sense of adding drama to it, because when you look at it, even when you look at some of the YouTubers, when you look at more professionally set up camera settings on the camera and you look at the person and they're speaking throughout the video, when it's properly illuminated, it's just more pleasing to the eye to look at the human face when it's properly lit, instead of like just like plain, "Hi, I'm here, I'm going to talk about Star Wars." You know, something is very interesting. Like I just find it, I guess the word that I want to use is romantic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm. So this is another piece by them, and I'm going to close off by one more, which I have suspected going to have a couple of things to say about this. Also from Tim and Greg Hildebrand.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. So we see Yoda, and that looks like Luke. We got Darth Vader. That's kind of a different helmet look. We got Obi-Wan.
And we got Obi. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Obi-Wan Kenobi looks a little bit more like his movie counterpart rather than Luke.
Yes, I was wondering, why is that?
That's what I wanted to ask you. We mentioned earlier that both Greg and Tim Hildebrand were self-taught. And just to compare it to their previous piece, they know how to portray faces. I mean, this is arguably pretty close. They have other pictures of Orlando Calrissian, and he's pretty much on the money. He kind of looks like a stylized version of Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, absolutely.
But here, in this piece, Luke is quite a dramatic departure from what he is in the film. Why do you think they did that?
You know, I have no idea, especially when they know kind of how he looks like and they can get him to look like that.
Here's Luke up close. My guess would be, like, I'm interested to hear what you think first. Why would somebody have like an actual conscious choice of say, you know what, we know what he looks like in the movie, I'm going to go slightly different? Because this is obviously after the original trilogy came out. This is in late 90s.
The only thing that I could guess is that they're going for when he's younger.
Yeah, okay. That's a point there. That's something to consider. Luke we have not seen before.
Right. Right. Because that saber doesn't look...
Yeah, the saber too. It looks very, very simplified. You're absolutely right. When you look at the handle, it's nothing like what the lightsaber looks like in the finished film.
Right.
And again, it would have been proper to say, like, maybe they didn't have the final design of the lightsaber because the movies were never made. But this is clearly after the movies. This is 90s. To me, what comes to mind is that a lot of film critics, when they describe Star Wars, they say that, oh, well, you know, these are movies for children because they don't go deeply into their characters. And the characters almost serve as templates, heroic templates. They're very simple. And one of the arguments that Star Wars fans make is that what's the whole point? That's the way that George Lucas wrote them, that every kid could transplant themselves inside of their hero and kind of imagine and feel that they are that hero. So when we look at this version of Luke, yes, he looks like a young white male boy, but he has this sort of like almost universal innocent beauty about him of a young person just stepping into a larger world. And it almost feels like almost anybody can put themselves into this character, say, well, gee, hold on a second. He doesn't look like Luke Skywalker, because a lot of artists that illustrated books and based on the movies or just based on the source material of the actual book, they deliberately went and didn't portray the heroes the way they're supposed to. They took a lot of creative liberties in doing that. And I think that's the episode that's happening here. There's a creative liberty, because how would you otherwise make an argument against the Obi-Wan Kenobi? He looks like Alec Guinness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, but Luke doesn't. I was like, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that is, I think maybe you're right. Maybe they wanted to make it so if a kid looked at it, they could transport themselves into it or imagine what they would look like as that, you know, that anybody could be innocent and you know.
Not Obi, he's old. We love him too. Right. We love him too, but he's old. We want to live longer.
Right.
All right. Michelle, how are we doing on time? Do we have time for a couple more?
Sure, we have time for a couple more.
All right. So another artist I wanted to bring is for our current audience. I'm a huge fan of the new line of books that is coming out called The High Republic. And I'm not going to go into why I like them other than say that it takes place 300 years before the films.
Right.
All right. That's the only thing I want to bring into this conversation. We're going to start with a variant cover of the first novel that came out, adult novel called The Light of the Jedi, which was supposed to kind of be an introductory to this new universe. It's like launching a whole new campaign of Star Wars storytelling that takes place 300 years before. And here, just to give you a little bit of premise, a setup, we see the heroic Jedi on the right versus these space pirates called the Nihil or the Nihil on the left, which kind of terrorize the galaxy. I think it will be benefit for you to go into it blind, because we just can talk about the art piece on its own merit without actually knowing the full story here. Like, what kind of like ideas or thoughts go through your mind? Like, what kind of story they were trying to tell here of the earlier version of the Jedi?
Well, it looks kind of like they're trying to do some kind of Robin Hood type of thing. And it looks kind of like those horses that we or a horse-like creature that we saw in one of the sequels.
Yeah, in episode 8, the Last Jedi, right? When they go to that place, Finn and Rose, they go to this planet and they liberate these tortured creatures, right?
Right. Those kind of look like those similar. And you can kind of see it looks like a Greedo type of alien. Yeah,
a Rodian there in the background. You're absolutely right. Good eye, Michelle. Good eye. No wonder you're the artist here. But what about the setting itself? What about the background? These like kind of like rocky formations.
Well, oh gosh.
I hope I'm not giving you a quiz here, making you think too hard.
You always make me think so. That I wonder if it's on. Is that Jeddah? You think?
Well, regardless what this is just a frontier planet. But I'm going to start off based on what you said. It's very interesting how, like, you obviously have not read anything from the High Republic. But you said a Robin Hood sort of adventure, right? With your classical swashbuckling adventure. And what they were trying to do in the High Republic is represent the older Jedi in their highlight of the zenith of the Jedi, the golden years of the Republic. And the Jedi are not a military force. They're not part of any government. They're frontiersmen traversing the wilder areas of the galaxy, almost like these space westerners who are there to uphold peace. They're not an army. They're not in full swing. They're these chivalrous people, almost like Robin Hood is. This merry adventure of doing right by the people. And that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they were going for. And this art piece actually came out before the first book launched. So nobody had the idea, what are these Nile space pirates are going to be like? What are the heroes going to be like? What sort of sensibility are they projecting with these new take on the Jedi? I just found it really, really fascinating.
Yeah, that is really cool. And I kind of see the space western because you get the sense of like Utah or where,
right?
Wyoming
or Arizona, right?
Yeah. I can see that.
How do you feel about this on that technical level?
Oh, it's brilliant. It looks brilliant. I mean, I love the way they use color. I love the way they use light. You get a sense of, some of those old Western paintings, actually.
Yeah. This is by Jama Jurbayev. I have a feeling that this person is potentially from the same part of the world that I am, from Caucasus, based on their last name. I don't know. I'm going to research after the fact. But let me show you this other art piece by him. Now, this is from the second book from the same franchise.
Okay.
So, it was from the first phase, was the trilogy of books, very much like Throne trilogy that you're reading. Now we go to the second book by the same artist, Jama Jurbayev. This one is called Rising Storm. Now the stakes are higher. Now the Jedi introduced during their supposed quote-unquote peacetime, they're introduced to this larger conflict.
Oh, wow. Huh.
And my first question to you is, how is this tonally different from the Star Wars Legends art or art before George Lucas sold the franchise compared to this modern art?
That actually, that's the word I was going to say. It looks absolutely modern.
This is one of the prominent heroes of that era, Stellan Gius. I like to call him Stellan Gaius because that's how I first read his name. Complete total badass.
That's funny because he looks like Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Obi-Wan. Character-wise, he's more like Qui-Gon Jinn, where he's this very unorthodox Jedi that questions Jedi orders in some way.
Cool. Those are very different. That one alien lion-looking one down in the lower right, his eyes make my eyes confused.
Really? This one?
No, down in the, keep going, down in the lower right. Right there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Very bizarre looking. I'm like, what the heck is this? But, and here is where we meet Nile in the full force. They're almost like these barbarians in the Mad Max movies where they don't care, man. They like have these very ragtag designs. Their ships are cobbled together from different junkyards, and they just basically terrorize the galaxy. They fly around, and in this particular episode, they fly to what is supposed to be a peaceful fair between different interplanetary fair where the head of the Republic state comes in and people from different planets conglomerate and they celebrate each other in peace and try to be supportive, and where these guys come in and they crash the party.
Oh, wow. And it looks like is that a Jedi at the top right that's giving orders above
this
Obi-Wan?
one?
The Obi-Wan look, above him. Yeah,
above
right there.
Him. This, I believe, sorry guys, a little bit of background noise kind of complements the hectic scene that we have here. If I'm not mistaken, she is the head of state of the Republic. I forgot her name. Okay. Lena Saw, I think. She is, if I'm not mistaken, one of the characters that is actually in the book. I forgot who she is. But very interesting figure. Actually, I've not noticed her before you pointed her out ever. And I looked at this art piece before. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it looks like she's pointing her finger, giving some kind of command.
Right.
Yeah, this is very cool. I love all the use of color here.
Yeah.
And it looks like they have some kind of Jedi, the lightsaber type of things on the axe.
I would say.
The vibro axe, right? Because it has like lasers around it. You're absolutely right. But I feel like that this artist, Jamal Jubayev, he tapped into this very romanticized, mythological art style that Star Wars is known for, regardless of what artist it is. And I wanted to show you this final piece called The Fallen Star.
Oh, wow.
This is now the end of the trilogy, and they end up on a very climatic, very dark note here. Something terrible happens to the Jedi.
Oh, wow. I can feel the emotion in it, for sure.
A sense of doom, right? Like, it's like, oh my God, it's irrecoverable situation. Like, how do we get up from this? What's going to happen next?
Right. Very somber.
All of 3 of these artworks, they were designed for the special editions of the books that you had to like go to like Target or special areas to pick them up. So this was also a special cover.
Wow.
You know what I really enjoy about this one, and you could give me your thoughts about this. Jedi are always exotic, colorful, and unique looking because they're portrayed as different species. Some of them are Twi'leks, right? They have like their Lekus over there. Mm-hmm. Some of them are Zabrak, like Darth Maul. You see like very intricate paint over their head and then horns. But here, all that we see is these robed figures and a single lightsaber. And I really enjoy that because it expands your mind and makes you raise these questions. Wow, it's not about a Jedi. It's not an individual set of heroes. It's what the Order is facing. Mm-hmm. It's such a larger than life scene because it involves everybody, the entire Order, not just a single Jedi.
Right. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
All right.
I love it. Love it.
Moving on. We're going to move on to artists. I have these 2 pieces prepared that you specifically requested for. Doug Chiang.
Yes.
Needs no introduction. Legend. I would say a scholar and a protege and a person that intimately knows the heart and soul of Ralph McQuarrie is Doug Chiang. He is reincarnated Ralph McQuarrie with his own sensibilities, his own integrity as an artist. He's not a copycat. And what we're looking at here, obviously, is a concept art for young Anakin Skywalker zooming in his pod, in the pod race that we see in the first film.
Right. And the way that he is technically, I mean, just to be able to create the mechanics of it, like I can see the engineering side here, and that's just always fascinates me. I mean, you really believe that it actually existed, and it's a technical drawing of something that actually exists.
You know what blows my mind here? It's very interesting that you use the term technical, and because we're looking at a piece of very slick and cool looking technology, which is stylized, cool looking, but also insanely fast, as we have seen in the movie, and we see it here because he blurs the only point of reference that we have in this painting is the floor, the ground, the sand of Tatooine, and obviously nothing in the background, which gives us that sense of speed. But what completely, totally just blew my face off when I saw this is the bellowing smoke of a nearby pod racer, less fortunate guy who's basically just blown to smithereens. The smoke is just so... It's almost like a character of its own. It's almost there breathing down, young Anakin's shoulder, and it's about to devour him, and he has to escape this death through his skill, through his know-how, but also through the Force.
Right. That smoke is absolutely brilliant, and you just feel the heat and the destruction.
Yeah. So how important it is for the artist know exactly he wants to execute. You know what? I'm gonna have this little piece of super fast space bike here. It's going to look cool, but I'm just going to add a little point of here that is going to completely make the viewer's eye travel there and be like, whoa, and just be taken aback with all the sense of like destruction going on in the background.
Yes, that looks amazing. And it's so clean. I think that's another thing that I want to say. It just is absolutely pristine.
Yeah. One more piece by Doug Chiang before we move on. Our favorite aliens from the prequel trilogy, the Gungans, right? These warriors who challenge a mechanical army of machines and robots, right? These innocent, sometimes goofy-looking aliens. They take up the arms, right? At the end of episode 1, if we saw in the beginning, Jar Jar is this annoying little creature. It's like, nah, he talks funny. But at the end, they're warriors, as one of their general states. Like, we're going to fight. right?
Yes.
And we see a very dramatic scene, which is very serene and peaceful and lush fields of Tatooine, which we kind of like want to enjoy. And green always gives you a sense of peace. It's being devastated by this machinery here, right?
Yes. The way he portrays that again. I mean, and it's still clean. I mean, you can definitely tell. I don't know what medium he's using. If he's using
pastels, maybe.
I couldn't tell if it's some sort of ink or what he's using, but it's absolutely brilliant. It looks like mixed media for sure.
Okay. We can't tell here because it looks like a reproduction on canvas or something like that. I'm not sure.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's not a print of an original piece. But you know what I really found interesting about the tanks from the Phantom Menace? And as I look at this piece here, it kind of like I remember once again, what sets them aside is that they're not these squarish, rough, brute-looking things. Right. They're very slick and organic-looking. And that's the grotesque aspect of it, because they're organic-looking and almost peaceful, almost like you want to approach one and cuddle it. But they are just... Here's a day of reckoning, and they come in and they start destroying with these destructive lasers. They're just killing off everything in front of their path. And that's the like really repulsive aspect of it is this monster in disguise.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, the way that he makes everything round and modern looking and not bulky. I don't know. It really complements well to the story.
Yeah, agreed. So this was that, and now I want to contrast it with something very, very different. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, Star Wars comic book artist, which was introduced to me through my friend William back in the day. He said, Ben, here's a Dark Empire comic book, and I want you to read it. And I wasn't sold at first because I had no clue how different comic book art is and it was trying to do. Without further ado, this Scottish artist, Cam Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
I actually ripped it from his comic book, his legendary book called The Dark Empire, which takes place after the events of the original films, where supposedly somehow Palpatine survived. He didn't survive in the sequels first. He survived in this book, released in the 90s. And basically back in the day, before the prequels rolled out, they didn't have a name for Coruscant, so they just called it the Throne World.
Oh,
and this is where Luke, Han, and Leia basically want to just beat the Empire, the remnants of the Empire, into a pulp and completely end the war. And they arrive to this place, which is now being dominated by these new Imperial killing machines, these super weapons called the World Devastators. As you can see it in the center, on the left, and in the view screen of the Rebel soldiers on the right-hand side, in this little like window panel, you see also a Devastator. I specifically picked this machine in 3 different comic book pages to talk about them. Tell me what's going on, even without reading the text here, what kind of sense of a story are you getting here based on artwork?
Oh, gosh.
Like, what do they look like, these Devastators?
They look very threatening for sure.
Yeah.
Massive. Like, you can't even conceptualize how big and how large these are.
Right.
Massive. I mean, if you look at those X-Wings, or not X-Wings, but the TIE fighters, I mean, you can see.
Here, right?
Yeah. Look how tiny.
Yeah. It's tiny. Yeah. At first, when I looked at it, it almost looked like a transformer from like a Japanese anime, right? Because these are almost hand-like, so it's deliberately human-like characteristics a little bit. But then it's nothing like humans. And the reason I put this piece in the center, Cam Kennedy's art is deceptively simple. A lot of people who look at pieces like, well, look, there's a lot of areas in the background kind of empty. It's deceptively so, because it looks like a lot of the stuff that he executed was obviously ink, but also watercolor, right? But when you see splashes here, these are signature watercolor splashes here.
Yeah,
and you do see the little TIE fighters here. Look at that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the way that he uses color temperature, a very simplified color palette, to convey a sense of urgency. When you look at this World Devastator, the way that his sense of his quality of framing a piece of technology or machine, or whether he's doing a landscape, is mind-boggling to me.
Right.
When you look at the central piece, you see a freaking planet framed in the, I want to say, armpit or the underarm of this machine. Like, holy crap, it's giant.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly just the mass, how big it is.
And then talk about the use of positive and negative space. First of all, explain it just in 2 words for some of our fans who may not be fully aware how it's used in the art and how Cam Kennedy manages it in this triptych.
Negative space. So it looks like he is just creating a deep use of shadow. I mean, seriously trying to convey just enough without going overboard to, I mean, you see the sense of shadow there. The
here you mean, right?
Yeah.
Some detail, some technological aspects of it, so you know it's a machine.
Right, but just enough to give you the idea of how massive this thing is and the shape, and probably more of the threatening nature of it.
Just look at the sense of scale.
Yeah.
And these are obviously more world devastators, right? They're just flying by. And the way that he just, it's so delicate. It's so well thought out. And once again, it's framed in a shot where we see, obviously, there's like Imperial base or Imperial ship that's flying by. But even there, the way that he shows all of these expressions here, the way that he illuminates these faces with light, and obviously the blue is supposed to be the shadow tint, but somehow he chooses to do it this way. And once again, it's like, all these faces around it, and you see this little thing in the window panel. It's like, oh my God, it's here to destroy us.
Right, and I think by using that blue, you get a sense of shock, you get a sense of urgency. There's something not exactly, it's kind of like it foreshadows it, of what's going on.
Yeah. Once again, it's a brilliant artist. He's one of my favorites. I would highly recommend for anyone to Google Cam Kennedy. Fantastic artist. If we start running out of time, Michelle, please stop me and say, Ben, this art discussion is awesome. I gotta run. See ya. We'll continue next time. I have just 2 more for you.
Sure.
Okay, we're good for 2 more. Okay. Thank you so much, Michelle. I absolutely love it. I think this is the best podcast we have ever done. As much as I love talking about your artwork, and I don't want to diminish it in any way, just hearing your sense, now hearing your mind unlocked and how you interpret other art, which I'm pretty sure inspires you as well. It makes you create your own stuff. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, me too. And then I like the fact that you're showing me different art that I haven't seen. And so it's eye-opening in that as well. So it looks like we have
Dave Dorman, an artist and illustrator that needs no introduction. George Lucas himself personally owns artwork produced by Dave Dorman, which he bought, and he's a proud owner of that. Brilliant artist. This is from the same comic where we're talking about the Shadow of the Empire. If Cam Kennedy illustrated it, Dave Dorman is responsible for illustrating the covers. He also covered a lot of Star Wars young adult and adult books. This is Shadows of the Empire, where the Emperor somehow survives.
Right.
What I wanted to ask you about this one is, what do you think about Dave Dorman's use of composition and which details or pieces he decides to put in his art?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I love it. I mean, look at the color, the purple and the blue. But then you've got
in the background, right?
Yeah.
Like, it starts from here. And I don't know why he uses this light shaft here. Like, maybe you have a better idea. Oh, it looks like one of these capsules where the Emperor's colognes are being held. Yeah, and he comes out of it.
Yeah, he looks like what I'm assuming is that he is trying to create his own Jedi, or it looks like.
He clones himself. He has clone bodies of himself. He basically projects his spirit into them.
Aha. And I'm seeing that. So obviously he did it well.
Yeah. Does this remind you of any 80s movies that we are?
Terminator, when he stands up, I think.
Yeah. You know what? I just freaking realized as you were talking, it dawned on me. I'm like, oh, wait a second. this is supposed to be Arnold. Like, what the heck?
It does. It kind of looks like that.
Yeah. So yeah, once again, you have a beautiful use of color here. I love how he plays around with these tones in the background. We're going to see it in his second piece as well, which is quite a departure from what we've seen before. Before we've seen like just heroic figures, recognizable characters. Here, Dave Dorman paints IG-88, the assassin's droids, and his pal droids. Let's talk about droids. The reason I wanted this art to shine there is it reminds me of one lady artist that I know that sort of kind of also uses backgrounds like this, that gives us ideas what they are, and paints little Grogu in front of them. I'm like, reminds me of somebody that I know.
Right. That was one of my favorite pieces, to be able to draw R2 like that. Yeah. But I love droids. To me, that they add so much character to the story, and to me, it's fascinating how they have human characteristics. You think of them as...
I mean, look at this guy. He looks like a grumpy old man. He's like, get out of here.
To me, it looks like something from, there was an old movie back in the day, like something from Frankenstein. I don't know. Nosferatu or something. It looks creepy.
Right. So these are his droids. And I just wanted to show you this briefly because I really enjoy how the background can be a part of the design and not have necessarily super recognizable things. It's just like red stripes, the word droids on it, but something in it it places these droids somewhere that you want to find out where the heck are they.
Right.
So that's him. And final piece by Dave Dorman is, once again, this... If I were to pick a single Star Wars illustration which defines the saga for me in all its permutations, is this piece.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
This is Dave Dorman's art of Ulic Qel-Droma, a Jedi who lived 5,000 years ago during the times of the golden age of the Republic, which was beset by the Sith War. A giant, epic Sith War, and this character goes through a devastating loss, through a huge fall to the dark side, and then a very, very evocative redemption arc.
Wow. And just the way he captures all of the hands back there holding all the sabers, and each saber looks different than the previous one.
Michelle, I would make a case that if you completely extract its main subject, Ulic Qel-Droma, from the painting, it is... I want to cry, man. I want to nerd out over this painting all day because just seeing these hands, that's what the Jedi do. They're the light of the society. They're the guys who bring peace. They fight for what is just. And seeing these hands just raised in the air, like,
right?
Oh my God, like I want to cry. I want to weep. I'm telling you. And then you position this dude in front of them, and I'm ready. He's in that position, right? Like, how much of posture is important to tell a story? He's like, whatever may come, I have my Jedi, I have my friends to back me up. I'm doing this.
Right. Very emotional piece. Yeah. Absolutely.
And what also Dave Dorman helped create, along with other artists of the Tales of the Jedi comic books, is portray the exotic age of the Jedi who look unlike anything we've seen before. Look at this belt and the belt buckle, these little chains, almost like a gypsy little robe here, and these very colorful tones, and this piece of like a shell arm or something like this. It is so vastly different from what we remember.
Yes. And it kind of looks like he's got a mullet.
Where almost, right?
You know, like he's short in front. And
bro, you want to go kill some Jedi? Sith, I got this, bro. All right, one last artist. You ready for this?
Sure.
So in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a campaign of 19 Star Wars books coming together in one giant storytelling event called the New Jedi Order, which I'm actually covering with my podcaster. And what it did was it showed the Jedi in the future. And Han, Leia, Luke, they have their kids. They're out there fighting a new threat. And this is a Japanese artist, Tsuyoshi Nagano, who portrayed the Japanese versions of these covers that we unfortunately didn't get. And we only discovered them through, thank God, internet was there and the Force.net fan website was there. Tsuyoshi Nagano.
Oh, wow.
Just to give you a prerequisite for the story, you you are currently reading Throne trilogy, right?
Sure. Yes.
So Admiral Thrawn has his right-hand man called Admiral Pelion, right? Or
Captain
General
Pelion. Yeah, yes.
Pelion. I'm sorry, Pelion. Look in the center of this art. This is Pelion in the future.
Wow.
Tiny spoiler alert. He's going to be there for quite a while. But anyway, tell me about the faces that you recognize here, and who are these potential two Jedi in the center? And specifically, the reason I want to ask you, obviously, you probably don't know the story, but you might figure this out through art.
Okay, so if I was going to guess, we've got Han and Leia, and we've got their two kids. She's going to have twins. So
oh, you know that. Okay, all right.
So it looks like she's going to have a boy and a girl. So
were you familiar with this concept before or no?
No.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Complete newbie.
And here.
So I'm not sure who the one is in. Oh, that's Luke and Mara Jade. And I don't know if they have a kid, so I don't know if that is.
All right, minor spoiler, not yet, but soon.
Okay.
Not yet. Something might happen. Maybe they'll adopt a dinosaur or something, I don't know, space creature. But again, what I wanted to ask you here is Tsuyoshi Nagano is known for once again replicating facial likenesses to the T.
Yeah.
And that's just one small of his accomplishments. When you look at the Jedi twins that come first in the Jedi books, which you're currently reading,
right?
Jason and Jaina Solo.
Ah, nice.
Welcome. I mean, look at Carrie Fisher's, like obviously a little bit stylized, idealized face, but look at Jaina. Look at Harrison Ford, and look at Jason, like.
Right.
I mean, did he accomplish it, or did he accomplish it?
Oh,
what score are we giving him?
Absolutely. It's like you took Luke and Leia, or Han and Leia, and put them in an AI and said, if they had kids, this is what they would look like.
Except this is better than AI. This is Tsuyoshi Nagano. This is one of the favorite. He's one of the favorite artists in the Star Wars fandom who portrays Mara Jade. People love his rendition of Mara Jade.
Yeah.
She does have that raven hair, this idyllic kind of like white female, just beautiful, projecting confidence and strength, and just square jaw, kind of like beautiful woman. But other thing I wanted to ask you here is the capacity to which Tsuyoshi Nagano can convey a story in just one composition.
Oh, absolutely. You've got your Death Destroyers back there.
Yeah.
Some sort of weird plant type of thing. Looks like it's alive somehow.
You're telling me parts of the story they didn't even know yet. Just looking at this, like it's alive. It's like it's capturing her.
Right.
Michelle, wait till you get. I know we're kind of like deviating from art a little bit. Wait till you get this version of Pelion. My God, I think he's gonna be your husband. He'll be like, this is my Star Wars husband. Like, I want to marry. You know how people, like young women, just like flock around. You know, Harrison Ford is like, he's my husband. He's like, they have like a crush on him. He's gonna be your man crush. Trust me.
That's funny.
Yeah. Next piece. We have two pieces to go.
Okay.
This is a story that takes place during the Clone Wars, where our guy Mace Windu goes on his own adventure called Shatterpoint, and Tsuyoshi Nagano portrayed once again the Japanese cover to the this book, which takes place during the times of the Clone Wars, which you're familiar with painting because you do a lot of Clone Wars characters.
Sure.
And what I wanted to ask you here is, we talked about composition before, but here, what Nagano is specifically doing, if we take the clones here, he specifically cuts out specific figures, right? He portrays them in this kind of like almost one way because they belong like to the same place, the same scene, let's say, right? We have the clones here. Then you have Mace Windu, his head outlined here, this female behind him. Perhaps you could argue they also may be taking place in one scene. Then you have this alien creature, and then he kind of sprinkles randomly a couple of spaceships and a couple of recognizable characters, once again populating it by Mace Windu. When do you think it's effective to put different characters out of scenes together, and how do you resolve their like sizes? How do you put them effectively in one composition?
Oh, gosh, I've always wondered that. Like, to me, it seems of importance in the book. You know, like,
oh, so it's like a hierarchy of what's going on in the story.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's what, you know.
Because the way that I was looking at, you know, it's when you look at the eye level that they were teaching me in art school, if you want to put people in one scene, regardless what their scale is, obviously she's smaller scale, her face is smaller than Mace Windu's, so she's obviously in the background, he's in the foreground. But if we keep their eye level straight and on one horizontal line, it sells the sense that they're standing on one plane. They belong in one scene. But I can't explain it. I thought maybe you would have an answer for me. Like, I can't figure out how artists do that. They just are able to transplant different sized characters. But it never looks busy. It never looks convoluted. I guess that's the word I'm going for. Everything just sits well on this page, right?
Right. I do like the composition of it. And actually, like, Yoda's eyes go with the alien's eyes, and Palpatine's eyes go kind of with her eyes. I mean,
yeah, you're right. So there's sort of a horizontal plane, our hierarchy going on there, right? And I don't know if we ever got a photograph of. We sort of have a similar photograph of Samuel Jackson standing like this, but here he looks like a boss. And I wonder how much photographic references Nagano had here. But I mean, this is him, man. This is
absolutely. Absolutely. I bet, you know, he's been around for ages. And so I'm sure he had put plenty of reference material.
He wants to be back in Star Wars. I would embrace him with open arms if Mace Windu somehow survives. Last piece of the day. Also Tsuyoshi Nagano. I don't think we're dealing with any particular story here. I could be mistaken. I did not research this particular art very well. I've seen it plenty of times before. It almost looks like he's just riffing on different characters in the Clone era. Obviously, we got Count Dooku. I know you know who this is, right?
Is it what is her name?
Asajj Ventress. You knew it. You knew it. You just... All right, we got Anakin here before he turns to the dark side. I don't know who this Jedi is. We have Kenobi, and once again, just reiterating that point where you can still have different characters out of random scenes or different stories in Star Wars and put them together and just be very, very effective here. But also here, I just wanted to ask you one final question: is how is size used here specifically?
Well, it looks like it's very balanced, if I were to say, because Obi-Wan and Asajj are pretty much, I don't know, it seems like they're kind of the same size.
Yeah.
I see a lot of symmetry, actually.
Yeah, because you're right. It actually divides the art. Like if we go this way, from this side of the Jedi Temple to this side, it's equal amount of characters. 3 characters here, 3 characters here. We don't count little R2 here as a droid.
Well, actually... when you do create, you need, when I say balance, it looks good when you have an odd number.
Oh, really? Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it creates balance.
Yeah, and it looks like I guess he wanted to punctuate here, you know, this greater themes of greater good in Yoda versus greater evil in Count Dooku, and these two opposing forces, right? Anakin, he's going to become dark side, foreshadowing sort of that, and you know, Asajj Ventress versus the good team on the left-hand side.
Right. Does it look like Count Dooku's saber and her sabers are similar handles?
Yeah, he gifts her, according to the lore, once she fulfills her training, she's like, I'm ready, master. He gifts her 2 twin lightsabers.
So that's why they're kind of similar handles. Huh?
And it's sort of also, once again, reiterating, right, the apprentice and the master sort of relationship, right?
Yes. Yep.
So once again, right, with such a small detail in the art, you can accomplish so much, right?
Yeah, and the way he details the faces are spot on, really.
Well, guys, first of all, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. If I can stop sharing our screen, beautiful faces back here. Two pieces of artwork. Look, it was really awesome and insightful, like how we went through these different artists. I promise I'll do my homework better next time and involve more artist names that you personally wanted there. But we did cover Ralph McQuarrie and Doug Chiang. But right, it's what are the thoughts here? Like we have these choice of so many amazing artists throughout the decades that work on Star Wars, and all had something different to bring into it, right?
Right, absolutely. I think that's what makes artists, they bring their versions and what they see, and you see things from different perspectives. It's absolutely brilliant.
What do you want your clients to take home with them? What are the things that make you most proud when somebody owns your piece of art, or sometimes contacts you later like, hey, by the way, Michelle, I showed the piece that I bought from you a month ago, and my family or somebody, a friend, has seen it. And like, what do you want people to carry on with them as far as Star Wars and your art is concerned?
I think what I like is I just want people to look at it and then just notice different things, all the details. When I show my art online, it translates one way, but when you actually have it in front of you and you're able to look at it in your own light with your own eyes, there's so much more detail that is conveyed when you have it in your hand versus what you see on a computer screen. And so I think I've had people tell me before, wow, it looks so much better in person. I cannot believe all the depth and detail that you're managed to get with a piece of chalk, or, and it's like, yes, when you are able to look at it with your own eyes, with your own lighting, you'll be able to see so much more than I'm able to convey.
It's almost like unwrapping a Christmas gift. Like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Right.
Even though you got a little tease, right, via emailing and then showing the concepts, when you see the final piece in its full size with the actual tangible work being done, whether it's like spray paint or paintbrush, whatever that is, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's when I'm able to hear my client, other than say, oh, thanks, I got it. But when they come to me and they say, wow, I'm so impressed. I thought I was impressed by just seeing it on the, on the screen. But when they say, oh man, and then they're able to pinpoint little things that they love about it. And then it makes you feel like, yes, it's being appreciated. It's being seen for what I want it to be seen.
Yeah.
And it's that part actually gets me, more than them just saying, wow, thanks, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the final thing I want to say before we say goodbye and wrap things up is, obviously Star Wars was created long before many artists were even born. It has influenced in many great ways. It is obviously not your IP. It's not your characters that you're portraying. But I think where Michelle as an artist comes in 100% is those feelings that you give people. It's sometimes a lot of illustrators' talents go kind of like unnoticed, like, oh yeah, I just have this painting of Vader I ordered from this and this artist, and some people just don't have the decency even to remember your name. But don't forget that it's you conveying that energy of taking a pencil, whatever medium you're working in, and you're creating something that somebody, when they look at it, they instantly recognize and fall in love with it. It's not just a Darth Vader picture. It's not like a Xerox copy or a print. It's you in there. It's your heart and soul that you put in these existing characters. And I think one of the biggest accomplishments that illustrators have is when you're able to extract yourself from it, deliver what the project requires, and when the people look at it, they just marvel. They can't explain. It's like, oh, they get these bubbly feelings. Oh my God, I got Grogu. Like, oh my God, they go crazy over it. That's your accomplishment.
Right. Thank you. I also like the fact that I never thought that I had a style per se. I always thought, I'm just able to do stuff. But then they're like, oh no, but when you hang your art up there and you hang it with several different people and you can all draw the same subject, you can still see you in that art. Yeah. And I think that's very telling too. That's very cool. It's kind of like putting your own signature without putting your signature on it.
Yeah. Well, guys, here we are. Michelle, please remind everybody where they can go take a look at your art, order a commission. Where can people contact you?
MichelleNooney.com, and then that will take them to my link tree. And then from there, there's several different tabs that you can get a hold of me. So MichelleNooney.com.
Awesome. And as always, your art is always welcome on the Star Wars Timeline Facebook. I love seeing when your things are just at work. If you go to Michelle's Facebook page, you will see how she's working on the pieces before they even finalize. Like she's adding detail to stuff. It's just interact with her, drop a comment, put a like in this video, comment below what were your favorite pieces that we covered, and let us know which artists would you like to have covered next time, because I hope, and I'm pretty sure if I can peer a little bit into the near future, we'll podcast again. As always, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Please support us. If you enjoy this podcast, like the video, like the channel, and please go check out Michelle Nooney's website.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben, for having me.
Take care, everyone.
Peace.
This was super fun. That was definitely the best podcast we did. I'm awesome.
Wow, that was awesome, man. Yeah. I am so thrilled. Like the different pieces of art that you're showing me was just like